Thank you for tuning in to the Into the Classroom series produced by Mental Health California, sponsored by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative.
Hello, you guys. Welcome to the pod at 7. My name is Andre Nolan White, peer leader here with Brother Be Well, and I hope you guys are ready for another super insightful and impactful session. With that being said, I want to let you guys know that this is a safe space. We're going to be touching on a lot of topics, and I want you guys to feel as comfortable as you can. Before we get started, I would like to thank Mental Health California and Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative for supporting. I would like to thank Coach Crump, Patrick, Christian Jacobs, and Dr. Rimsey all for being here today. As you guys know, we have an amazing team, and I just, am really excited to get this pod at 7 started. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Patrick.
Thank you, Andre. Hello, everyone. My name is Patrick Ma. I'm one of your clinical advisor here at Brother Be Well. And tonight we're talking about a topic that almost all of us are familiar with, exams. It can feel like standing on an edge of the cliff when we are in the process of taking one. Heart racing, mind spinning, everything riding on one moment. But I just want to remind all of you that the test, not a reflection of your worth, but it's rather just a snapshot of your knowledge at that time. Tonight, we're breaking down the test-related stress and the learning strategies, how to take control. And I'll pass it on to Coach Crump for the topic introduction.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Coach Crump, and I just want to let you all know, just like Patrick said, it's true. It's something that all of us are familiar with. Test stress is one of the most common challenges for students, but it rarely gets the attention that it deserves. Our body actually often reacts as if the body is in danger. Sometimes our heart might be pounding or shallow breathing might take place. A lot of times our thoughts are in a worst case scenario loop where we're just like on repeat. Clinicians call this a fight or flight response. And while it's actually meant to protect us, it can backfire during the exam or during those moments. The good news is, however, that there are practical evidence based ways to manage it. And from reframing negative thoughts to practicing breathing drills, these small strategies can actually calm your nervous system and really, help to sharpen your focus. So tonight, it's about learning how to recognize test anxiety for what it is, dismantling the myths of perfection, and stepping into exams with tools that can help keep us grounded. So I'll pass it over to Andre to go into our next part of our section.
Thank you for that, Coach Crump. We are now going to get into our icebreaker. As you guys know, we're all about, just fun ways to start off the pod here. And the icebreaker is going to be, what's your go-to stress snack or caffeine-free ritual during test week? And for me, I recently graduated college. I see hot chips in there. For me, I was a big almond guy. This sounds weird, but my grandmother told me, before you take tests, or before you do anything that's going to demand a lot of mental stress, eat almonds, because she told me that they were a brain superfood. I don't know how true that is. If you guys are nutritionists or anything like that, you guys can fact check me. But for me, it always, made me feel prepped and ready to go. I see Patrick, all the bread, water, that's an amazing one. Peanuts, peanuts, almonds, ramen, popcorn, chips, waffles, matcha. Elizabeth, matcha's a lot of hype right now. So, it's, there's not a one size fits all. Everybody does something different, whether it's almonds, peanuts, hot chips, matcha. But as we go through today, just kind of be loose, be free, and just know that test stress is going to be kind of part of it, and just trying to find a middle ground and ground yourself and know how to move forward and handle that. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Patrick for our first poll.
Thank you, Andre. Yeah. So let's go through our first poll. You should see that in the link in your chat. What part of the testing or exam season stresses you out the most? We have the pressure to perform or get the perfect score, fear of failures, what it means for your future, not feeling prepared even though you study, comparisons. That's a big one. And then just everything. It's overwhelming from start to finish. Yeah. See a lot. See a lot of response coming through. The fear of failure and what it means for your future. Isn't that funny? Even though we are all going to school to become successful, we fear failure. And I think this is very tricky because in order to become successful, failure is actually not, it's inevitable. You have to fail to know what works and what doesn't. So just because you fail at something doesn't mean that you are not worthy to pursue whatever that you are trying to achieve. It's rather the way that I look at it is like any failure that you experience is a redirection. What you do is not working. What can you do differently so that you can do better next time? The pressure to perform and get the perfect score. Perfectionism is actually your worst enemy because you're going to keep doubting yourself. And then you have pretty close call between, it's changing a little bit, but not feeling prepared, and then just everything. There's something called imposter syndrome, and I think I have mentioned it in other podcasts. That's the feeling of not belonging, even though you are completely qualified, if not overqualified to be in your space. So it's something that a lot of people experience. Will someone from the audience want to come off mute and share your experience? I would love to hear it. The question is, what part of the testing or exam stressed you out the most?
I think the part that like stresses me out the most is like I just feel like the exam itself because I feel like I understand the content, but I think like the exam overall kind of stresses my overall like understanding of it because I kind of like undermine my own thinking and I feel like I'm like stupid or like I don't know how to explain it. Like I feel like that's the most I think like overall the exam is or just not understanding a question because I feel like that can set you back like a while from like the actual test. Because when you see a question you don't understand, you kind of like think that you don't understand the whole test itself and then you go into each question like feeling that you're dumb or like you just aren't as smart.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing. So I'm going to challenge you. The next time that you look at the test, I want you to think like, and when you feel like nervous or feel overwhelmed, I want to challenge you to reframe your thinking. If you're feeling scared or nervous or overwhelmed, it's because you care about your education, you care about that exam, and you care what that test mean to you and your future. So I want you to reframe that. And what you describe is just something I touched on just briefly before. It's imposter syndrome, where even though you study, you know the material, you still going into the exam thinking that you are stupid, like you just don't understand what is going on. With that said, a lot of time it can set you back because you are now flustered, right? Rather than that, just one question at a time. If you don't know a question, I would advise you just move on. Look at the next question and see what can you answer and then circle back later. Because when you are sitting looking at the questions and you're feeling paralyzed because you don't know the answer, that will slow you down significantly. Rector Rinty, actually, can you share with us like what feelings come up in those moments, and then what is the body doing, and why is Ileana feeling that way?
Thank you. All of the reactions that people talked about in the poll, all of the feelings that Ileana talked about, they are just very normal responses to stress. And from a clinical perspective, what's happening in the body is that the brain thinks that situation is a threat. So when the brain thinks the exam is a threat, then the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, activates, as coach said, a fight or flight response. And that response releases stress hormones known as adrenaline and cortisol. So when those two hormones are released, it can cause things like faster heartbeat. Maybe you have shallow breathing, difficulty concentrating, or you go to write in a test and you remember nothing. And the tricky part is the response that our brain gives for exams is designed to help us survive danger, not to help us take exams. So the brain is essentially reacting as if the test is a threat to survival, even though it isn't. So one helpful step I think would be just recognize what's happening. Instead of thinking that something is wrong with me, let's reframe as, okay, I see that my nervous system is activated right now. Stress is a biological response and I just have to manage it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rimti. And Ariana, I just want to touch on your response really quick. Ariana said at the end of the exam where you're still working on question and everybody else turning in their papers, guess what? They could have got the whole thing wrong. I'll tell you that. The people who are the fastest in finishing exam does not always equally mean that they are the smartest or they get their exam right. So don't let that, try to remove that focus. Remove your focus from other people and just focus on what you are doing. And I'm gonna pass it on to my man Andre.
Thank you for that, Patrick. I heard a lot of focus in that statement and, not letting things distract you. And with that being said, we're going to play a video for you guys called Watch for the Distractions.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Watch for the distractions, but don't get distracted. Look, watch for the distractions, but don't get distracted. Look, watch for the distractions, but don't get distracted. Listen, don't get distracted. Listen, don't get distracted. Peace, young kings. What up, what up, what up? It's your brother Coon the Poet. I just slid in real quick to drop a jewel on you. So remember, in this sport game of life, there will always be obstacles. There will always be distractions and things to be put in your path to try to stop your flow, to try to stop you from reaching your touchdown, making that three-pointer, and ultimately, the home run. Remember, you were written to be a winner. You have already won. So you already gonna win. It's your brother Coon the Poet. Peace.
What an amazing video. You're a winner, so that means you have already won. As I hear that gives me, a lot of hope. I hope it does the same for you guys. And now we're going to jump in to our first trivia of the day. And that trivia question is going to be, which 2023 digital fashion phenomenon sparked a global debate about body image, consumerism, and about the power of AI filters influencing both TikTok and real world cosmetic trends? As I see you guys are pouring in the answers already, you guys can see the answers are not just A, B, C, or D. They're S, W, G, and J. Those answers are virtual thrift flipping, AI avatar, the bold glamour filter effect, or meta runway drops. And looks like, we have our winner. They had just came in. Congrats, Isaac Lopez. That correct answer was G, the bold glamour filter. So congratulations. You guys got that one really quick. Keep this in mind for the other trivias we have. They're not just A, B, C, or D. You guys need to read the question and then, answer. And with that being said, we are now going to jump in to our next segment, which is a video titled How to Beat Test Anxiety and Take on Exams Without Stress.
Test anxiety. Let's talk about it and then let's do our best to destroy it. The time leading up to a test is so laden with stress and anxiety because tests are high pressure situations, and high pressure situations can actually deplete your working memory and reduce your performance. This is commonly called choking, and it's common to all types of high pressure situations, not just academic ones. Now, it's important to note that a little bit of stress and a little bit of fear can actually be a good thing. Stress heightens our senses and brings out our best. Like the famous radio broadcaster Edward R. Murrow once said, "The best speakers know enough to be scared." The only difference between the pros and the novices is that the pros have trained the butterflies to fly in formation. Without any stress at all, we'd just be apathetic. Stress means you care too much though, and your health and your performance start to suffer. So today I want to help you mitigate some of the stress and fear that's caused by your exams. And specifically, I want to focus in on 3 main fears that I think all students have when exams are around the corner. Number 1, the fear of the unknown. Number 2, the fear of inadequacy, the feeling that you're unprepared and not ready for the challenge ahead. And number 3, the fear of the stakes, the feeling that everything is riding on this test and that your life will basically be over if you fail. And actually, now that I think about it, there are a couple of other worries that I think most students probably face, but I want to wait until the end of the video to briefly touch on those. First, let's talk about these 3 big ones and then go over some specific things you can do to reduce the stress caused by each of them. So let's talk about our first fear, skeletons. The fear of the unknown. So really the best way to conquer the fear of the unknown is to make the test as much of a known quantity as possible. Do your best to make that test feel like a familiar old friend when you walk into the class and face it down on test day. Now, there are 3 main ways to do this that I want to go over in this video, and the first one is to simply recreate the test conditions as best you can when you're studying. This means actually going to the location in which you'll be tested, and if it's your classroom, I don't really think sitting in class every day really counts because it doesn't really recreate the high pressure situation of the test, so go there during the off hours. Even if the room's empty, take a desk, sit down, and try to do some active studying while you're in the actual room you'll be tested in. Don't stop at location either. Try to recreate the time constraints and maybe even the type of questions you'll be quizzed over, and basically make it a dry run that doesn't really have the high stakes of the actual test, so that when you actually do take that test, it's as if you've already done it. But you might be asking me, how do I actually recreate these test conditions if I don't know what's going to be on the test? And that leads into my second tip, ask your professor. A lot of students make the mistake of assuming that if the professor didn't readily give out information in class about the test, that they're unwilling to give it out if asked. This isn't always the case, so if there are aspects of your exam that you're unclear on, ask your professor. You can ask them about the format, what types of questions you'll be asked, true, false, multiple choice, essay style, how long you'll actually have to complete the test, and what sort of materials are allowed in the testing room. And my final tip for getting to know the test ahead of time is to look for old tests. A lot of fraternities, sororities, and other student organizations maintain test banks that you might be able to look through. And if you don't have access to anything like that, there's sites like Kufers.com, which maintain their own databases. Our second big fear to conquer is the feeling of inadequacy, the feeling that you're unprepared for the challenge that the test presents. And honestly, the best thing you can do here is simply to prepare. Like the famous marathoner Juma Ikanga once said that the will to win is nothing without the will to prepare. So use the other tactics in your arsenal, the discipline hacks, the planning techniques, and make sure that throughout the semester you're working diligently, so that way when you get to the weeks leading up to the test, you don't have a whole lot of catching up to do. You've been preparing the whole time. Like if you've ever seen a Rocky movie, my favorite part is actually the training montage, because that's the stuff he has to do in order to win the fight. Your entire semester is your training montage, and if you don't use it correctly, then the test is not going to go well for you. It's just that simple. But let's talk about those couple of weeks going up to the test. Whatever you did during the semester, revision is really important, and there's a couple of things you can do to make it go more smoothly. Number 1 is to go through your notes and the other materials you got throughout the semester and see what areas of the material that you're not really clear on. Know your gaps. That will allow you to focus most efficiently on the facts and concepts you really need to solidify in your mind and not waste too much time going over stuff you're already pretty clear on. Additionally, you can create something that the author Walter Pock calls a home stretch schedule. This is a more detailed schedule that you probably don't need to break out during the earlier days in the semester, but in the couple of weeks leading up to a test, it can be really useful. So on this schedule, you want to make sure you block out time for your set obligations like class and work, and also for the more mundane things you take for granted, like eating and sleeping, because these are very important when you're studying for finals. But then you actually want to block out time for studying. That way, when you create that list of gaps and the material you need to go through, you know when you're going to actually study it. Also, when you're revising for tests, it's doubly important that you study actively. Like if you're just passively going through your notes and textbooks, you're wasting a lot of precious time. So make quizzes for yourself and make sure you're having to actively recall information and pull it out of your brain. Now, what if you tried your hardest to prepare throughout the semester and revise efficiently and you still just don't feel confident about your ability to do the test well? Well, I've got a couple of suggestions to ease that fear, and the first one is to simply act confident. Tell yourself that you're going to do well in the test. Whenever I go into a new situation where I feel a little bit unprepared, I just tell myself that I'm going to do well. I might not, but there's no reason to worry about it, so I just give myself the confidence. You can do this too, and there's also one other thing you can do to ease your worries before a test, and this is actually backed up by science. So a study done by the University of Chicago actually showed that students with test anxiety were able to raise their test grades by simply taking 10 minutes before the exam to write out their worries, to air them out. So if you're feeling anxious about a test, try this. Show up a little bit early for the test, pull out a piece of scrap paper, and write out why exactly you're worried. This pulls it out of your brain, puts it on paper, puts it aside, and lets your brain focus on the actual test. Science. And the final worry we're going to go over in this video is the fear of the stakes. The fear that this test is the be-all, end-all, the determining factor in who you're going to be and where you're going to get in life. And I just want to tell you, it's not. One test does not define you, and in fact, your grades don't define you. If you've ever read my blog post on the student success triangle, you'll know that academic performance is really just one point of the triangle. The other ones are value creation and relationship building, and if you're putting in effort in these areas as well as your academic performance, one test is not going to ruin you. You can think of your test in the same way that I think of job interviews. When I've gone into interviews in the past, I don't think of it as an audience with this all-powerful arbiter who decides whether or not I get to stay in my mom's basement for the rest of my life. No, it's just a conversation between two individuals who want to figure out if they can provide value for each other. Think of your test the same way. It's just one examination of a small body of knowledge you've learned over a set period of time. That's it. But also, feed off of some of that pressure. Find your center, generate some confidence, and let that pressure hone your senses. Let it make you stronger rather than weaker. Now, let's briefly touch on those two final worries that I alluded to earlier. The first one is perfectionism. A lot of students feel like they have to do absolutely perfect on an exam, and I just want to tell you, you don't. The writer and speaker Scott Birkin once said, "I don't want to be perfect. I want to be useful, I want to be good, and I want to sound like myself." This should be your mindset going into a test. Know your goals, work as hard as you can, but don't expect absolute perfection from yourself. It's unhealthy. And the last worry is past failures. If we fail one time, we tend to see a trend forming and we think we're going to fail again. This is due to something called the negativity bias, which I'll talk about more in depth in a future video, but basically we tend to put more weight on negative experiences. The thing to realize here though is that the outcome of any particular situation is determined by the factors that went into it. So if you change the factors, you can change the result. Change the way you study and prepare, you'll change the grade you get on a test. So that's it for this video, and once again, I have to leave you with a quote from the Roman poet Horace, who said, "In adversity, remember to keep an even mind."
Yeah, that was an amazing video. I'm going to pass it over to Christian so he can start us in our main room discussion.
Thank you, Andre. Yeah, that was a great video just talking about test anxiety and some of the biases that we have already. So what we're going to do in this part of our meeting is really talk about, what are some of the root causes of test anxiety. And you'll see in the chat in a minute, you'll see a prompt that asks a question, and it's going to ask you, for some folks, it's different things. And for example, it can be, disappointing people in our family, in our life. And also it can be, just a sign of, self-worth and things of that sort. So the question to you all today that we're going to call on, see if we can have a discussion on it. What's the root of your test anxiety? So to kind of think about what your root cause of test anxiety and where it comes from. And as you're thinking of those answers, we're going to take a couple people off of mute just to see what your thoughts are. For some people, it could be, like the last video said, negativity bias. We're consistently always thinking about negative things. So that could happen. So does anyone want to come off mute just to share with the group? What's the root cause of your test anxiety? I see a couple people in the chat. I see one chat not being satisfied with my score, and Aaliyah saying not knowing what to expect on the exam gives me test anxiety. Did either of the two of you want to come off mute just to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for me, I think it's so funny because I just got out from class right now and I had an exam, and I think I definitely experienced that test anxiety for myself where I just felt like I didn't know what to expect on the exam. So it's just like in that cases where like maybe there's not a oftentimes like a study guide that's not provided by the professor, like it just gives me anxiety. I'm like, okay, now I don't know what I should be spending my time on for this exam. So it's just you spend, your whole night, the night before, like studying almost everything, and it's overwhelming. And so you just get that anxiety of like, okay, what pieces are going to be on the exam, etc. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of share that.
Yeah, so it sounds like for you, it could be like the fear of the unknown, right? So the fact that you're having, you don't know what to expect, and that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from. Remember, anxiety is kind of like fear of the unknown in the future. So yeah, that does make total sense. Why not knowing what's ahead could create that test anxiety. And thanks for sharing your experience. Anyone else want to share their experience? I know there's a couple other folks in the chat. If you want to come off the mic, we have time for I think a couple more here.
I feel like what really stresses me out is that like I've actually been experiencing this right now because I've been doing really bad in my math class, and I feel like what stresses me out about like tests or exams is that if I did bad on previous tests or like said in the video, like I kind of like overthink my abilities because sometimes I'll do well on a worksheet, but then I go into the test and I just do really bad. So when I go into another test, I feel like I'm a failure or I'm gonna fail because I did bad on a previous one. And then that kind of like drops my confidence in myself and I just end up doing really bad when I know that I'm capable. I fear that I'm gonna fail like I did those other times. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar. Thanks for sharing. It's very similar to the previous comment, just in terms of the pattern. You can see there's a common pattern, right, where folks may have fear of the future based on what's happened in the past. And just a quick tip that can help you with that is, positive self-talk. So basically, your brain is being trained to go on a certain pattern. So failure equals negative thought about tests equals not success. So one tip could be to have positive self-talk with that. So even though I've failed in the past, the next text is the future, and I have another chance. Talking to yourself like that could be a tool. Another example too, just in terms of struggling and having that the root cause of text anxiety can also be just related to the idea of being unprepared. A lot of folks, there's that level of just being unprepared or not studying enough. Some people just have that anxiety, right? They feel like they didn't put enough time into it, or they feel like they didn't read through the materials enough, or they maybe didn't have time, or they have families or children. Those are other factors we're not thinking about as we may not think about as well, is that we have other factors that maybe we weren't able to prepare as much, so which kind of gives us some anxiety on how we're going to do. So just another way to see and kind of understand like why the root cause of a test anxiety comes up. One section where hopefully you can take some of these ideas and apply it to your schooling, your test studying with the positive self-talk, and understand the past is in the past and moving forward in terms of improving in the future for tests. And that's one tip that you can use. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and move forward to our next section. Thanks everyone who participated, and we're going to pass it back over to Andre.
Thank you so much, Christian. And with that being said, we are going to drop the Blue Shield survey into the chat. If you guys can go ahead and fill this quick survey out, it is tied to your guys' gift card you guys receive at the end of this. So if you guys can, make that a priority, go ahead and fill that out. And while you guys fill that out, I'd like to circle back to you, Christian, when it comes to test anxiety. I know, you went through a lot of schooling. How did you kind of manage that? Just in a quick, 30-second response.
Yeah, I think what I did it was just time management. With my career, we had to take several exams that were like 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hour long exams, and you're sitting for a long time, and you have to gain thousands of hours. So I think one thing for me was organization and having there's programs out there that will help you study too. So you're not alone. There's a program for small fees that you can use to kind of keep you organized and planned out. So my test was planned 4 months in advance. Now they tell you about 3 to 4 months is a good time to plan for large exams, and is using that structure, yeah, if it's paid or free, using a structure kind of help you study and give you prompts and actually go to study classes too. So I'll get the combination of those will really be helpful in terms of using outside help, not just relying on your own skills.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Christian. Organization is a super big key, and that's something that you definitely taught me. You told me sticky notes are going to be super helpful, and I started doing sticky notes throughout these sessions and just in my everyday life, and that helps me when it comes to my anxieties, whether it's tests, work, practice, or anything like that. So thank you so much for all of your tips. And with that being said, we're going to jump into our second trivia of the night. And this is, the reminder again, the answers are not just A, B, C, or D. You guys get one shot and one shot only. So we're going to drop that second trivia question in the chat. And that is, what 2021 novel told the story of a Black girl navigating grief and systemic racism through fantasy? There's T, Y, Q, and Z. So if you guys can go ahead and fill that out. Let's see if you guys, are super up to date on your readings. I know I am not a big reader myself, so I actually do not know this. But I am super excited. It looks like there's a lot of Z's going on that I can see. I'm probably gonna have to read this book after this. There's a T in the chat. What else? There's a Y, a couple Q's. So yeah, don't be afraid. Answer. This is going to be on top of your guys' gift card you receive. And it looks like we have a winner, Cassandra Rosberg. Congratulations. You are tonight's winner of trivia number 2. So you will be receiving something on top of your gift card at the end of this. And with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Coach Crump for poll number 2.
Hey, thanks a lot for that, Andre. And shout out to the winners of these trivias. I love to see it every night when you guys pop in and you're just dropping your answers. So definitely keep it up, and love to see you guys staying engaged. Right now we're gonna go on to our next poll. So you guys should see a link in your chat. And essentially, we'd like to ask you guys a question. What messages were you taught, whether it be indirectly or directly, about failure? So go ahead and look at some of those responses, some of those answers. One, it's unacceptable, it must be avoided. It means I didn't try hard enough. It's a learning opportunity, but it still stings. It defines who I am, not just what I do. And lastly, maybe it didn't really teach me anything, and we didn't really talk about it. So feel free to answer. I'm seeing a lot of folks going into the third one. It's a learning opportunity, but it still stings. There's a saying that I saw. Someone has a quote on their wall, and it says, I never lose. I either learn or I win. I might be butchering that, but it's something that kind of stood out to me. And I think that's what I'm seeing here in some of the responses, is that it's a learning opportunity, but it definitely does still sting. It's not a reflection of who you are. We've heard that, kind of mentioned earlier. There might be some reasoning as to why, but ultimately it's not a good feeling. So these are some of the things that, we often see when it comes to having that test anxiety and some of the feelings that are behind it. I'd love to get, folks who, might have answered that it's a learning opportunity, but it still stings. If someone would like to come off of mute and just maybe express why you chose that answer. And if not, if it gets too quiet, I'm more than happy to pick on somebody, because I got a couple of people that I know that are here tonight that like to talk. So definitely want to give opportunity for everyone who's here. If you'd like to just come off mute and maybe express why you chose the one you chose, even if it's not the one that's in the majority, it could be one of the other ones too. So feel free to come off mute and talk to us as to why you chose the one you chose. Well, I see some other people are still adding some answers to the chat. So make sure you guys look through the responses, fill it out. I am going to ask Eric Gonzalez. Could you tell us why you chose the answer that you chose? And talk to us a little bit about what that message meant to you about failure. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, for me, I was always taught that, bottom line is that failing, it never does feel good. Even if you prepare for a test and you fail, it's something that it's like, oh, maybe I didn't try hard enough and it still stings. But you should take it and reason I picked that is because, we've all failed here. We all have had something that we all really wanted to succeed at, but we fell on our face flat. But, we're still here. So we took it as a moment to kind of just reflect, kind of think back on it. What could I do better? And that's why, it still hurts to fail, but, you can take it in stride and continue pushing forward and just use this opportunity to learn from it to keep on going.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Eric. Most certainly. Appreciate your response. I'll pivot a little bit. Dr. Rimti, as we look at, all of this from a clinical perspective, I'd like to know if you might be able to elaborate a little bit on, some of these messages about failure and what they might mean and what folks might carry with them as they are, having these feelings that they've been taught about failure.
Yeah, the anxiety around tests is our beliefs about failure, and it develops like really early. It develops in childhood because some people grow up hearing things like, if you fail, it means you didn't try enough, or, failure is unacceptable. So, psychologically, what the adults around the child are doing is they're tying their self-worth, the child's self-worth, to their performance or performance-based self-worth. They're tying the identity of that person to their performance. So a test sometimes could feel like not a learning experience, but a judgment of who they are as a person. And if you're judged as a person just based on your test score, everyone would be anxious. And a lot of people are. That's where anxiety is coming from for a lot of the cases. So I think a healthy shift is something that Eric talked about. Separate your performance from your identity. The score is just a reflection of what you knew in that moment, that the day's temperature, what the room looked like, what the ocean looked like. It's not about your intelligence or your potential or your worth. And fun fact, research shows that people who view mistakes as information rather than failure have better long-term learning outcomes. So take that. Take that and think about growth mindset and just, think to yourself, I can do this. And even if I can't, that's okay. Next time.
Hey, thanks a lot for that, Dr. Rimti. That's so true. I really like what you said about the growth mindset. That's really important to have and to carry with you. So there's a lot of things that we could always continue to talk about on this topic, but I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Andre to take it over to our next section, which is our video presentation.
Thank you for that, Coach Crump. As he mentioned, you guys, we are going to jump into our video presentation called How to Manage College Stress.
Let's start by taking a deep breath together. College is full of fun and exciting times with new friends, new experiences, and expanding knowledge. It can also be a time of high stress and sometimes intense anxiety. Between completing your coursework, fulfilling work responsibilities, and meeting personal obligations, it is easy to get overwhelmed. When stress goes unchecked, it can impact your body in ways you might not expect. You may experience a lowered immune system leading to frequent illness, the inability to fall asleep or stay asleep, headaches, digestive issues, fatigue, and more. Psychologically, stress can lead to anxiety, depression, increased irritability, and brain fog. When considering how to address stress in your life, first try to identify the situations in which you feel heightened anxiety or experience any of the physical symptoms associated with increased stress. Do your palms get sweaty when taking an exam? Do you have trouble sleeping when you have a busy work week? Does cold and flu season seem to hit you harder than others? It is completely normal to feel the burden of increased pressure that comes with being a college student. And chances are you'll be faced with stressful times over and over again throughout your adult life. This makes it even more important to find ways to cope so you can continue to accomplish your goals. So, what can you do to manage stress? Here are some tips you can use in your daily life. 1. Try to maintain a healthy diet. In times of increased stress, your instinct is probably to reach for your favorite comfort food. But the food we eat can also impact our mood, so much that some scientists refer to the digestive system as our second brain, or more scientifically, the enteric nervous system, or ENS. and our ENS constantly communicates with our central nervous system, or CNS. Our brain and our gut talk to each other through the hundreds of millions of cells that line our entire digestive system. That's why you might feel butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous or experience nausea in moments of high stress. The foods you eat can help your body stay in balance and respond to outside stressors. Foods that contain folate, antioxidants, zinc, vitamin C and D, as well as probiotics, can help keep your digestive system happy, balance blood sugar, improve your mood, and help you manage your response to stress. 2. Stay active and get enough exercise. Maybe you're thinking you're not athletic or that you are out of shape, or you just don't have enough time in the day to get in a good workout. The good news is exercise comes in many forms, from yoga to intense cardio or even a walk through your neighborhood. And short increments can make a big difference. If you don't have time for a 30-minute workout, try 3 10-minute workouts instead. Physical activity helps increase the brain's production of endorphins, the feel-good neurotransmitter. Perhaps you've heard of the term runner's high. It also improves functions of the physical body that are sometimes impacted negatively by stress and anxiety, like the cardiovascular, digestive, and immune systems. You may also benefit from improved self-confidence and better sleep. If you're just starting to incorporate exercise into your routine, remember to start slow and find an activity you enjoy to stay motivated and stick with it. 3. Improve your time management and avoid procrastination. College life pulls you in many different directions. Scheduling your day and prioritizing your most crucial tasks can help you find balance. If writing out a schedule helps you stay committed, try using a planner and stick to your plan as much as possible. Outside of your work and school schedule obligations, plan time to study, exercise, and even relax. And remember, saying no to activities that aren't necessary and don't add joy to your life is okay. Finally, number 4, practice mindfulness. Mindfulness practices can help you recognize and intervene when you start to feel stress levels rise. But what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a state of intentional, non-judgmental focus on the present moment. What are the sights, smells, and sounds around you at a given moment? How are they making you feel? Are your feelings positive or negative? Whatever your feelings are at a given moment, they are valid, and acceptance without judgment is an important part of mindfulness. Just about any activity can be mindful as long as your focus is on the present moment. Walking, eating your favorite food, or drinking a cup of tea can all be mindful activities. But perhaps the most effective way to reset your nervous system in times of stress is by using breathing techniques. Focusing on your breath leads to fuller and deeper breathing, stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system that tells our body to relax. One technique you can try is sometimes called waterfall breathing. Focus on your breath in 3 parts. On your inhale, focus first on your lower abdomen, then your ribs, then your chest. On the exhale, do the same in reverse. Sitting or lying in a comfortable position with one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly can keep your focus on your breath and sensations of the body. Another technique is 4-4-4 or box breathing. With this technique, inhale on a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale on the same count, and hold breath out for 4. Then repeat. Focusing on this pattern and even visualizing the square shape can help to clear your mind and improve your focus. If you find your mind is wandering, just bring your focus back to your breath. Setting a timer for just 2 minutes to practice one of these techniques can keep your body relaxed and prevent stress from getting the best of you. With that, let's all take another deep breath together. We hope this video provided you with some helpful tips and that you have a relaxed and peaceful day.
That's a wonderful and helpful video for you who are maybe taking exam soon. But speaking of exam, when you are preparing for an academic event or a test, what the days are leading up to it, we want to know, how did you feel in your body and what thoughts were the loudest. Because maybe one of our clinicians can give you tips on how to feel better. Is there someone from the audience who want to come off mute and share? You can certainly use your raise your hand function and just come up mute total. I can also call on some people if you like. If you're typing and you feel like sharing, please come on mute. How about a winner? Isaac Lopez, would you mind coming up mute and then share with us?
I think my loudest thoughts were just like worrying about how I was gonna do and just like seeing if everything that I studied for is like gonna be like a payoff. And then also just like where I felt it most of my body is like my chest. I think when I get like anxious, I feel like my chest tighten. And especially just like everything, all the thoughts going into my head, like did I study enough? Did I like practice as much as I could have? And just thinking about like how I was gonna do on the test.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I think this go back to something that we shared earlier in the podcast. That when you have that much anxiety is because you care. So you're already winning just by caring. There's a lot of people who don't care about their academic success, and just by caring, you are one step closer to achieving your goal. Having that like chest tightness is pretty common. It's not quite a full panic attack, but it certainly can be. It can feel very nerve-wracking to feel like that. And like the video that we just watched earlier, managing stress, the box breathings really help, and the waterfall breathing also really helpful in this situation. Christian, do you have any more tips for our audience at home?
Yeah, thanks. So, Patrick, I think the only other tip I would say was just to being aware of what's going on in your body. I think that's the important part. Is as you see, the list mentioned a lot of physical issues. Physical somatic things. So that's obvious that the mental is connected to the physical. The stomach aches, the butterflies, all that. So knowing that you have control, you can control how severe and intense it is. That breathing is really important. And a lot of people talk about breathing, 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 but a lot of folks don't explain why it's important. And what it does and what it's doing is it's providing extra oxygen to a body that's in stress mode, that's telling you that you're safe. So that extra oxygen is saying to you that you're safe, because when you're in fight mode, your oxygen is being restricted because you're breathing faster. So just to know that that breathing will slow you down, and so physically you can operate better. So the goal can be, I want to keep myself out of this fight or flight mode, so I have clarity in thoughts, clarity in in breathing, and also all of my memory and things of that sort.
Thank you so much, Christian. That's a really helpful tip. And now we're gonna moving on to our trivia number 3 with Andre.
Thank you so much, Patrick. As he mentioned, we are starting our last trivia of the night, and all of the same rules apply, you guys. The answers are not just A, B, C, and D, and make sure you read the question before you answer. And with that being said, we're going to drop that question in the chat now. And that question is, what social dynamic made Among Us a pandemic hit beyond just gameplay? There's R, escape from reality, U, identity, deception, and trust building, L, horror storytelling, or G, collectible item trading. This is a very popular game, so I'm super excited for whoever wins. A reminder as well, whoever wins will get a $25 additional gift card on top of their gift card they will get from tonight's session. And congrats, the correct answer was U, identity, deception, and trust building. So congratulations, you will get that extra $25 gift card. And I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Rimty for a short grounding exercise.
Thank you. So let's take a minute to help our nervous system settle. You're welcome to participate or simply listen. If it feels comfortable, place both of your feet on the floor and allow your shoulders to relax. Close your eyes and put your hand on your heart. Now take a slow breath in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. Let's do that one more time. Slow inhale and gently exhale through your mouth. Let your shoulders drop, open your eyes, and look around you. Release any tension that you are holding in your body right now. Remember that your body has done a lot of work tonight. Thank you for taking a moment to care for yourself.
Thank you for that amazing grounding exercise, Dr. Rimsey. We will now drop the sign-in sheet for tonight's session. If you guys can go ahead and fill that out, this sign-in sheet will close at 8:30 p.m. tonight sharp. So make sure you guys sign in, and you will get credit for being here, and you will receive your gift cards. Our next pod at 7 is going to be April 1st, 2026 at 7 p.m. And that topic is going to be party, drugs, and bad decisions. So hopefully you guys will be there for that. I would like to thank our clinicians, our peer leaders, and our youth mentors for being here. And I would like to thank you guys, our audience, for being here as well. And we will see you guys next time.